Hello and welcome to Into You podcast, the podcast where I take a deep dive into getting to know the best you. My name is Adam Straughan, and it is an absolute pleasure for me to introduce one of my favorites on the show today. So he is a composer from Massachusetts, USA. He's composed music for films such as The Space We Make and the forthcoming All Roads End. He also scored forthcoming films Death March and recent Best Horror Short winner at the Montreal Independent Film Festival, Hollow Walls. He also scored Tales of Horror Invader, a little something that I might have been involved in. And he also composed podcast theme music for Coffee and Tequila, hosted by Alistair and Zachary Patton Garcia, and the theme for this very podcast that you're listening to right now. It is my pleasure to introduce Mr. Bryson. How are you doing, buddy?
Doing well. Finally getting an opportunity to chat with you. Very excited.
No, thank you very much. What have you been up to today?
Well, it is Father's Day, so I had to do the obligatory call to my dad and wish him well. Otherwise, we have Emma as our guest for today's episode, and we've just been kind of hanging out, trying to stay cool. It is freaking hot.
Tell me about it, man. Yeah, like I did the Father's Day call as well, but my dad's really, he's a bit of an icon, but he's funny. So what he does is like, my dad, when he picks up a word or a phrase that's new to him, he uses it all the time, but like ridiculous amounts. And he thinks like he doesn't realize he's doing it, but it drives us all insane. So his favorite word for like a while was discombobulated. Like he'd never heard it before, but every sentence was, God, I woke up this morning, I felt really discombobulated. And then just another thing was like, oh, I went for a walk and I came back in, my legs were really discombobulated. I was like, oh my God. So like, that was his word for a while. And then, have you heard the Scissor Sisters song, Kiss You Off, I think it's called?
Yes, I think so, yeah.
So that's a song title. But my dad thought I'll just use that as a phrase. So any opportunity, like if I was on the computer and like I was closing windows down, he'd be like, just rather than saying close that window down, just kiss that window off. I'm like, that is not even a saying. What are you doing?
Dads.
I know,
Dad, without them.
But I'd say that I was like, this, you're driving me insane. He's like, Adam, why are you so discombobulated? I give up. I am done.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
But he's iconic and he's funny. He makes me laugh, and this is just the way he is. But yeah. So how's your week been? What have you been up to?
Oh gosh, a lot. It's been a pretty busy week between work and then writing some fun little music cues right now that just kind of for fun, just making sure that I'm fresh and up to date. But yeah, it's been good. It's been a solid week. Outside of like again boiling alive in the heat and humidity.
Yeah. Christ, I know. I mean, we've both got like warm drinks. We probably didn't think through that. So I've got a pint of water here just in case.
Smart.
Yeah, I'll probably have the coffee and then just splash that on me every now and again. Imagine. All right, cool. So I want to ask as well. So you are a composer, Brian, but you also work within the science realm. So you're like a scientist, essentially.
I work in biotech.
Wow.
I'm a protein biologist. And so that is my 9 to 5, Monday through Friday.
All right.
Sometimes weekends, day job. And it's been, especially during the times that we're in, it's been very busy. Biotech is a pretty pandemic proof job. And we've been doing a lot of work, obviously, with all the COVID variants and viruses and kind of different enzymes that it interacts with. But it's been good. It's been very busy.
Yeah, I mean, if there's any time that you're going to be busy, it's going to be since March 23rd of 2020 is when we went into lockdown. So I can imagine you're still like busy with it all right now, right?
Yeah, that's been the main thing that we've been doing in the lab is just working with different COVID proteases, and it's been an insane amount of work, but it's been incredibly rewarding as well. I mean, you get to see science happen as it's happening, which is very cool. Yeah. This last year in general for science has just been extraordinary.
Well, that's awesome, man. Maybe I'll have to get you back on. We'll talk to you about like Brian the scientist. But let's get into you as a composer. So let's go back to the beginning. So baby Brian, I just want to go back and start. So basically, when did you first like learn music? And like, were you like a junior? Were you in high school? And then, talk me through that process. Did you just pick up an instrument and start playing? Like, where did it all begin?
Yeah. So I was 3 when I started kind of fumbling around on a keyboard. My dad is a incredible musician. He's a guitarist. And I would often mimic on the piano what he would be playing on the guitar. And it kind of just took off from there. As I got older, my ear kind of got better and better. And so I got really good at kind of playing things by ear. And um, my dad, the one thing that we've always agreed on is music. And he was
Nice.
incredibly fostering and really just wanted to push me and see me excel. And
Mm.
so he's been a really good music resource.
Wow, nice. So you said that you were copying him on piano. So was that the first instrument that you learned to play, or?
Yeah, I have vague memories of getting a violin when
Oh,
I was
wow.
around that age, maybe
Yep.
5, 6. I I don't recall ever doing anything with it. Piano, the keyboard was always sort of my go-to. I just enjoyed all of the different voices that you can get on a keyboard. You know, you can get
Mm.
brass, you can get strings. So that was kind of what drew me in, and been doing it ever since.
Wow, nice. So obviously, you play keyboard, you had a violin. Who knows if you played it at any point?
I
But
do. It's funny you say it because I did buy another violin
oh,
not too long
nice.
ago, and it's somewhere. I was like, how hard can it be to learn? Apparently, really difficult. So it has been sitting under the bed. In fact, Emma's probably right above it now.
Mm.
And I keep promising myself that I'll get back to it one day, but unfortunately, that day is yet to come.
So, what instruments do you play like overall? And so you've got obviously you're going to learn violin properly. You play piano. What else do you play? Guitar or?
No, I'm a terrible guitarist. I can thumb around on the ukulele.
Oh, wow.
That's been kind of fun. I picked that up a couple years ago.
Mm.
But it's really just piano. Piano is the main instrument that I play.
Yeah, awesome. And in terms of like, reading music and understanding music, when did that come into the fold? Because obviously, like anyone can kind of, I guess, step up to, a keyboard and start bashing out some notes, I guess. But I'm making it sound really simplistic there. But when did it turn into when you could read music and write music? What age were you when you could actually do that competently?
Um, I'm not entirely sure that I ever arrived there. Uh, Reading music is something that I basically taught myself how to do.
Nice.
And I would say I notate better than I read it.
Mhm.
Of course, it's always getting better and improving. So, but yeah, I generally just taught myself how to play music by ear, and any kind of musical theory or musical notation have been things that I've been kind of picking up along the way. A lot
Mm.
of books, a lot of YouTube videos. Again, my dad is a great resource for that kind of thing. He really drove music theory into my brain at a very early age,
Yeah.
which was incredibly helpful. I remember we'd have moments where we'd just be sitting in the car, and he liked a lot of like the funky kind of 70s music. And a lot of that had a lot of odd meter in it. And he would just be teaching me how to count meter
Oh,
and
nice.
looking at key signatures and rhythms. And so that was really helpful. So
Mm.
yeah, it's been kind of like a fun continuous journey of continuing to grow and evolve and push myself to learn more. I think looking at jazz has been super, super helpful as far
Yeah.
as learning music theory and composition, just because so much of jazz has just perforated itself through modern day music.
No, 100%. Like, I think what's interesting as well, you were saying there, like even like timings and like a lot of that, like your dad kind of hammered into you when you were listening to music. There must be a difference from when, say, like, I don't know, I listen to an album. So say like, Olivia Rodriguez album's just come out and I'm listening to these lyrics like, yes, you get me, you 17-year-old. Yes, all of my exes, take that. Listen to this girl. But obviously, so I'm listening to, that funky beat. I'm listening to the lyrics. I'm obviously identifying because hello. But obviously when you listen to music, so say whether it's pop music or anything like that, are you listening to like timings? Are you listening to like notes that stand out or like, certain compositions within the music itself? Like, are you hearing that and listening, taking note of that as well as, kind of the lyrics of the song and everything like that?
Yeah, so I do have a confession. I don't listen to much pop music. Most of the
Okay.
music that I listen to is orchestral music.
Yeah. Makes sense.
And soundtrack music. Of course, the classic composers, Bach, Mozart, Beethoven.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, so I listen to music that I think most people like to study to or kind of have on as background noise, but I get very into it.
Yeah.
I love listening it's like a skill. You hear a song, you're like, that's a great song, but as you start listening to it more, you're like, oh, there's there's so much more intricacies in here. What is the horn part doing? What is the strings doing? Um, that kind of things is really what stands out to me when I listen to music, all these different pieces of the puzzle that sort of make this wonderful composition that we all end up loving.
Yeah, no, I love that. It's funny that you mentioned that because I have a playlist on my phone which is literally just called reading playlist. So whenever
Yep.
I'm reading anything, I can't read with anything with lyrics in. I can't listen to it. It just puts me off, and I'm trying to read words and I hear words being sang at me. My brain just, does a flip. So
Yeah.
I have literally, it's a full just playlist of scores, really, just different soundtracks from films, from TV, from games, just like even just classical pieces. It just helps me just switch everything off and just focus on exactly what I've got to do. And as you say, studying, I used to do the same. And yeah, man, I totally feel that. There's still some of my favorite pieces of music are from like films or from like, more classical pieces and things like that, like Debussy and everything like that. I absolutely love
Sure.
it. So yeah, for me, I guess I have to be in the right frame of mind. And I guess, that it's dictated by what mood I'm in each day. It depends on what I fancy, but that changes probably every hour. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, I totally get that, man.
It's amazing how music and mood just go hand in hand. I mean, it can either take you out of a bad mood or just securely make you even worse off than you were before. It's just an incredibly powerful thing.
There are certain songs, like I have a gym playlist, so whenever I go to the gym and I want something that's a bit more pumped up and it just, gets me going in the gym, I wouldn't be necessarily listening to classical music in the gym because it's a completely different vibe, and I'd probably just be chilled out on the bench as opposed to actually doing anything. But yeah, so there's a lot of stuff in there, like a lot of like rockier stuff. It's a nice mixture. And I come back and obviously when I'm reading, I'll listen to my reading playlist. So it's nice just to have that. Music is the gift that keeps on giving, right?
It really is.
Yeah.
It really is.
So obviously, let's go into, you're talking about scores and everything, and that you actually score films and video projects yourself. So when you come to, there's a video project, there's a creator who approaches you and says, like, Brian, can you score this for me? There's obviously different ways of doing that. And I want to kind of get into that with you. So how do you like differentiate and create the process of scoring a film? So break that down for me in terms of, let's say you're handed the footage. There you go, Brian. Can you score this for me, please? How do you approach that?
Yeah. So I generally start with the story. The story is critical in filmmaking. And so I like to find out from the director, what story are you trying to tell? What sort of subtext might there be? Are there any big themes that you want kind of to have established? And a lot of the time, the film scoring really is revolved around that sort of story. They're telling a story with images, and I'm telling one with sound. And if everything works out well, then we're telling the same story. And so that's sort of how I like to approach things. Just bare bones, elevator pitch. What's the story? And then from there, we can kind of tease things out a little bit. I really like to be in constant contact with the directors or producers or whoever I'm working with. I just think having kind of continuous dialogue really helps flesh things out, and it makes things easier for my end. Also, have they been listening to anything? A lot of like when you're listening to music, how often do you get inspired? You have like this random idea that you're like, oh, maybe I should run with this, write this out, maybe even do a screenplay of myself. So I'll ask, what kind of music were you listening to when you were coming up with this idea, if any at all? And so that generally gives me a nice jumping off point to be like, okay, so this is sort of the area that we're going to be playing around in. And from there, it just kind of evolves into a film score.
Nice. No, I like that. I think it's really important as well. You mentioned that you keep that continuous conversation between the video creator or whoever it may be. I think that's so integral because there must be different like film directors and obviously filmmakers who have like different levels of communication with you about it. So some people will probably just give you the information, say, right, there you go, just score it and let me have a listen when you're done. But then do you get some people who are like, right, so for this particular scene, Brian, I want this type of music. For this particular scene, I was thinking this. Like, do you have like those different types of comparisons within, filmmakers themselves?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, that's one of my favorite ways to work. I love that sort of back and forth dialogue, even if we don't agree. Sometimes I might have a completely different idea than the director. And that sort of interplay is really fun. Well, I've been in some situations before where the director, maybe apathetic is not the right word, but it's the word that comes to mind, where they're like, yeah, no, everything sounds great. And that's actually in a weird way almost more difficult, because
Okay.
then it's like, am I on the right track, or are
Mm-hmm.
you just not confrontational? Or
Mm-hmm.
so my preference would be to have, even if it's a difference of opinion, even if it's like, you know what, I don't like this, let's start over. um I much rather would prefer that than having someone who's just like, yeah, okay, music sounds good, let's wrap it up, kind of aspect to it.
Like, I mean, it's better in any context, I think, to have clear directions. You know exactly where you're going.
Yeah.
Plus, you can learn from that. Do you know what I mean? You can take away from that for your own personal experience and development, you know, within your own skills, so that you go forward, you do another project, you remember the experience from there, you think, oh, yeah, so that didn't quite work. So I tried this again, that worked. Maybe I can try it here. You know, it gives you that better experience, because then if you're just floating along with somebody saying, yeah, it'll be fine, how do you develop? Do you know what I mean? So,
It's so true. In fact, I mean, so there have been moments where I've written something that I love, right? And
mm,
I'm like, oh, this is perfect. The director's gonna love this. This is just
mm,
a hit it out of the park, so to speak.
uh-oh.
And I send it over, and I'm so excited. And they're like, hey, Brian, I really liked it. It's just not working for the movie, and that can be kind of not disheartening, but you try not to fall in love with any of your ideas, but
Mm,
sometimes it happens.
yeah.
And those can be kind of a challenge, but it's a great challenge.
Mm,
And from there, you can really tease out with the director, okay, well, what didn't you like? And then what did you like? Maybe there's the orchestration. Maybe it's the melody that he likes. He just didn't like it on cello, right? Maybe he wants something different.
mm,
And so teasing out those sort of things is really fun. Is
yeah.
really fun. I think a lot of people think that um, for film composition, especially, that it's a very free art, and that you can basically do, as long as you can think it and orchestrate it, you can basically do what you want. And it's not that at all.
Mm,
It's actually a very restricted art in a lot of sense, because you're working not only in the confines of uh, the story, but you're also working ultimately with the confines that the director has. And there might be disagreement between you and the director, but it's those disagreements that you really end up making something incredible out of.
mm. Yeah, no, I mean, conversations like that I love, because it's like filtering out everything and getting right down to the bare bones, and you're both on the same page at that point. 'Cause you might start here and they might be way over here. And as
Yeah,
you say, you've made something up here in this space, thinking like, yes, this is it. This is gonna absolutely smash it. And then the
yeah,
director goes, oh yeah, Brian, about that shit that you sent me. You know, and like straight away, like it's about bringing you both together, isn't it? And that you're on the same page, you're both
yep.
singing from the same hymn sheet, to use that old expression. But yeah, I totally get what you're saying there, and that makes complete sense. Do you have a lot of compositions and everything that you've kept where some directors have said, look, that's not going to work, and we try something else? Have you still kept some? Have you got like a backlog of, I'm guessing, loads that you must have, really?
Yeah, I have a lot. In fact, a lot of my SoundCloud are ideas that I never used, whether it was because the project fell through or
Oh,
we
nice.
just decided to go in a different direction.
Mm.
So SoundCloud is sort of like my island of misfit musical ideas. Um, things that I want to come back to and maybe explore in the future. But yeah, yeah. So that's generally that's sort of like my little online diary of music writing. And that's things that I like to share with people, even if it's not the most fleshed out idea in the world. Um, but yeah, SoundCloud is where it's at. Also, you should look up my SoundCloud.
No, 100%. I mean, that's how I got the theme for the other podcast I do last week on. So I remember I was
Yes.
going through and I was like trying to find some music that I thought might fit. And I was like, oh my God, Brian, can I please use this music because it fits so well? And you were so kindly said, yes, of course, Adam. You didn't tell me where to go. So thank you for that.
Anytime. Pleasure's mine. Pleasure's mine.
Cheers, man. So, yeah, so I want to ask you kind of, we've hinted towards this a little bit. So, in terms of genre within film,
Hmm.
obviously you must approach genre so differently as a composer. So, look at something like horror will sound so different compared to something like, maybe a war film or romantic, something completely
Sure.
polarizing. So, how do you approach different genres when it comes to composing music?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it really kind of depends on that sort of first interplay that I have with the director.
Mm,
A lot of times, especially with something like horror, it's like, oh, gotta make it scary and jump hits, and the typical kind of horror trope. And I generally like to steer clear as that as much as possible.
mm,
But sometimes that's just the sound that they want. Um, and it kind of all goes back to what I had mentioned before, is just kind of asking, like, all right, were you listening to anything when you were writing this?
mm,
And that so that generally gives me a really good kind of jumping off point. Um, and really the process for scoring any genre, at least for me, of course, I can't speak for anyone else. But my process to figure out the genre and all that is largely the same, regardless of the type of film or even podcast or whatever. It's largely all kind of starts from the same thing. It's just you get taken to a different direction.
Yeah, nice. I think with scores as well with films, which we'll come on to shortly. But I think one of the big things is they're always so iconic, right? So like when you think of a film, pretty much the next thing that you tend to think of, you think of the actors that are in the film, but the score is always the big thing. So
Yeah,
like we could play like I don't know something. So for example, the Buffy the Vampire Slayer theme music for Christ's sake,
right,
no
right.
further. So that start soon as
Yeah,
that starts, instantly that takes me back to like being a teenager in my parents' house, running into the living room because Buffy was on. Just straight away those
yep.
memories are attached to that theme music straight away. We have so many connections and we build so many memories just with this, this incredible iconic piece of music, don't we?
Yeah, no, it's so true. I mean, I like when I was younger, Danny Elfman's Batman theme, right? I mean,
Yeah.
or John Williams' Superman theme. I mean, it
Mm.
just immediately takes you back. And
Yeah.
that's, you know, having a really solid theme musically it makes the rest of your work so much simpler.
Mm.
Um, I really spend a lot of time developing these kind of main ideas in whatever project I'm working on. And they need to be. I mean, they need that time. Without a good theme, it's just what are you doing? What are you
Yeah.
doing?
Mm.
And themes, they need to be a whole bunch of things, right? They need to express not just one idea, but often many, right? I mean, you think of like the Force theme in Star Wars, right?
Mm.
How many times is that used? What are the different situations? But every time you know exactly what they're doing.
Yeah.
So themes like that, they really, I think, little advice for any hopeful composer out there, but you really got to make sure that your theme is malleable and that it
Mm.
works in not just one situation, but several
Mm.
different ones. So,
Star Wars has got so. I mean, we could do a whole podcast about Star Wars
oh
music
God, we
itself.
could. I'm ready.
Yeah.
I'm ready. John Williams. Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
he's the man. But speaking of that, do you have a particular genre that you favor or enjoy working in the most when people come up to you and say like, Brian, I want you to do music which is for a horror, and you're like, oh my God, yes. Is there any particular like genre that you lean on most, or are you just kind of happy with any?
I'll be honest. I love horror.
Yeah.
I love horror. Horror, I think you get a lot of freedom to be experimental. You can get really quirky with some of the things that you do that you maybe might not otherwise have that opportunity to.
Mm.
Um, you can really, especially like the sound design aspect of horror. Since especially modern music, it's really in an interesting spot. Like you don't hear a John Williams anymore,
Mm.
right? I mean that
Yeah.
thematic sort of music has, I think, unfortunately taken a bit of a wayside. But a lot of it is sound design. How
Yeah.
well can you construct, not just a theme, but just a general musical atmosphere? And so I think with horror, you get a lot of flexibility.
Mm.
There's this great, actually, so Christopher Young is a fantastic composer. He did the soundtrack to Sinister.
Oh
And
wow.
there's this one track on the Sinister soundtrack that is like the sound design in that thing. I mean, I listen to it with the lights off and see if you can get through it. I couldn't. It's just so out of the box. But it's things like that sort of
Mm.
innovation is just. I think that horror is kind of a unique situation to really pursue that.
Nice. I'll definitely check that out tonight. I'll switch the lights out and I'll just put it on full blast, and then I'll just hear screaming from my flat.
It's a tough one. It's fantastic though. It's
Yeah.
great.
But it's great though. It just shows you again, we've kind of talked about this, the power of music and the power of score like that when it can freak you out. Speaking
Yeah.
of film scores, you and I have come up with a list of our top 5 favorite film scores in no particular order because that would be asking way too much. It's tough. And I know I asked for 5 because we could be here for hours
I
going on with all
know.
of them. This was really, really tough. But I went with the 5 that when I think film score, I just think of the ones
Mhm.
that come to my mind straight away and just type them all out in terms of
Sure.
what I love. So we'll go back and forwards and we'll just, you say one, I say one, we'll get through our 5, Brian. So
All
would you like
right.
to start with your first one?
Sure. And this might be a little bit of a cop out, but it's got to be Lord of the Rings. The Lord of the Rings trilogy. The extended versions, of course, if you're going to listen to anything, it may as well be 12 hours long.
Is that Howard Shore?
That is Howard Shore. That soundtrack changed my life in a way that I can't even describe. I was 11 years old when the first movie came out, and so that'll give you all insight as to how old I am. But I remember listening to that soundtrack and being just blown away at its scope and its scale and the complexities, the leitmotifs, the theme. I just to this day, one of the best scores I've ever heard, something that I continuously go to and listen to.
Oh man, no, I completely agree. Like as soon as you said that, the first bit of music I heard in my head was da, 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 da. Like, and then straight away you're like, I know where I am. You know, it's just it's beautiful.
Amazing.
I have to say, Enya's Mate B that was used in the first Lord of the Rings film. Oh my god, that song, stunning, and what they did with it in that film as well was beautiful. For me, it still should have won the award, but Annie Lennox won it, but never mind. But yeah, I know what you mean though. Like Howard Shore, man, he turned it up for those 3 films, and wow, can you imagine some of those scenes without the score? Like when Aragorn in Return of the King is making his speech, but it is not this day. If it didn't have the score behind it, it would be like, all right, okay, Aragorn, crack on.
Just last night I was listening to the Q Glamdring from the Two Towers. It's the first one, and when Gandalf falls into the pit, right, and he's falling with the Balrog, and you just hear the choir come out of nowhere, and it's just like, I'm getting goosebumps right now just thinking about it. It's fantastic.
No, I completely agree. That is a great shout. So my first one is less in kind of grand scale compared to Lord of the Rings, but mine is actually the score to the film Gravity by Stephen Price. So you've seen Gravity, right, with Sandra Bullock? All right, fantastic. So for me in particular, it is the piece of music. I think it's actually just called Gravity, which plays right at the end of the film. So it's when she's got back in the shuttle. Total spoilers for Gravity here, by the way. She gets back in the shuttle. She's like plummeting down to Earth. You see the bits of it break off and like obviously spread across, like you see it spread across planet Earth, and then she hits the water. And that music as she's coming down is it literally gives me goosebumps. But as well, it's the moment when she like swims out and she swims up and she tries to stand up and then has like that fall and she's like no, pushes herself up, and that music as it builds up and you just get that single voice that just like as you stand, I reel from it, and I love that stuff so much. So yeah, that for me is standout. Do you know the music I'm on about?
Yes. Yeah. I really love Stephen Price. He's done a number of things that have just insanely mind-blowing to me. He's incredibly talented, incredibly gifted man.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't done much else by him, but Gravity,
should check out the Suicide Squad soundtrack. He did that.
Really?
The only good thing I can say about the Suicide Squad.
Gee, what are you trying to say, Brian, about that classic piece of cinema?
Yes.
No, I'll check it out, man. I will. Right.
You should. It's great.
Your next one, Brian, go.
Next one. And this is more for sentimental reasons, but Gladiator is what I listened to and I was like, I want to be a film composer. It just everything from that first battle music to the almost ethereal music at the end. Now we are free. Just oh my god, the woman's vocal, Lisa Gerrard, I believe, is the vocalist in that, and she's just, I mean, God, right at the heartstrings. Just incredible. And yeah, that was the first soundtrack that I was like, oh, I have to do this for a living. This is what I want to do. So that's it. Gladiator.
You know what? Great shout. Like, especially that track as well. Like, it's interesting. I was reading an interview with her about that, and she actually said, like, when you try and look up the lyrics, you can't. There are no lyrics because she just sings in a language that she said, this is the voice and the language I use to speak to God. And you can just hear that in the performance. Yes. It's absolutely, I mean, and so apt for that point in the film when it comes in, obviously, when he is walking through the fields, you know, like on his way to heaven, essentially. But that music is incredible. Yeah, brilliant shout, Brian. I love that music so much.
Yeah, it's so good. It's so good. Yeah. It never gets old. There's so many cues from that are just like, this is just Zimmer at his best.
He's the man. Weirdly, he doesn't feature in my list, but yeah, he's the absolute man. I mean, you know, everything he's done with some directors has been phenomenal, like Christopher Nolan, the work he does with him.
Yeah. Interstellar, fantastic.
Oh my god!
Sorry, I'm jumping the gun. Oh,
it's all right.
Jumping the gun.
Yeah, the cornfields music. Anyway. Okay, so my second choice is this one for me is one particular track by this composer. I, oh God, even talking about it now, I'm like getting emotional. I absolutely love it. So the piece itself is called The Demise of Barbara and the Return of Joe, which is from Kill Bill 2, which is by Ennio Morricone. So have you seen Kill Bill 2 and Kill Bill?
I have.
Okay, thank God, because if you hadn't, the call would have ended now.
I don't blame you. It would have been a travesty. Absolute travesty.
So this music plays when the bride has just done the 5-point palm exploding heart technique on Bill. They're both sitting in the chatting, and he knows he's going to die. And he says, you know, how do I look? And she says, you look ready. And then it's as he stands up, and it's that music. It's that dun 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 ah. Oh, that music! Like he stands up, he looks at her, and she's like emotional, and he's like doing his top, wiping the blood off his mouth. Tarantino himself is incredible for choosing music. Like whenever I think of Tarantino movies, I think soundtrack instantly. For all that he doesn't go for score per se, a lot of the time he chooses a lot of well-known songs and uses them in different ways. But that music, oh my God. I mean, he's famously known for like spaghetti westerns, isn't he? He's done a lot of like, a lot of like Clint Eastwood films and such. But to use that music in Kill Bill for me is iconic. I've watched that death scene probably about 500 times. One, because it's phenomenal. I love that scene. But two, the music, it just kills me. I love it.
That's an excellent choice. That's an excellent choice. I like that. That was pretty out of the box too. I would have never expected that one.
I'm like really specific.
No, I like it. I like it. So this is this one is not technically a soundtrack per se. It's more of just like a general appreciation of this gentleman, because I don't think I've heard anything from him that I hate. But Max Richter, who did his most famous pieces on The Nature of Daylight, he also did a fantastic Black Mirror episode. He did the score too. Yes, but on The Nature of Daylight, it's used in everything from Shutter Island to Arrival. It's that, I don't know if you've heard of it or if you're familiar with it.
I'll know it if I hear it.
You'd know it if you hear it. Have you ever seen Arrival?
Yeah.
Okay, you know the music at the end that plays when she has like that, spoiler alert for Arrival, but the future, the violin piece, that's his.
Oh, right, I'm with you now. Yeah.
It's just like the most gorgeous string quartet piece I've ever heard. Or it might actually be quintet. I think they might have a contrabass in there, but just incredibly beautiful, beautiful, incredibly moving. So that would be my.
I remember listening to that and like thinking it was incredible. I probably need to go back and listen to it again, to be honest. But yeah, great chat. Was that your third choice?
That was my third choice.
Yeah, nice. Okay, so mine is. This is probably the most one of the most classic of my choices, and this takes me back to being a little baby Adam straight away. So it has to be John Williams, the Jurassic Park theme. Now, that music for me, you know, the way it starts, even just doing that, I'm like, love it. It just takes me back to being in the cinema as a kid with my parents, being blown away by Jurassic Park itself, because the first one is a stone cold classic. Anyone who disagrees just doesn't understand.
It still holds up. It holds up better than almost anything else I've ever seen. It's just incredible.
Right? That scene when they pull up in the car, you know, and then like, you know, Dr. Alan Grant like looks and he slowly gets out the car and like takes his glasses off and he turns like, you know, the woman's head as well, and she looks and she's like, oh my God. And then John Hammond walks out and like they collapse and he's like, welcome to Jurassic Park. And it, you know, it just builds and explodes. Oh my God. That music just takes me back to being a kid, watching Jurassic Park and being in the cinema like, oh my God. It's phenomenal, right?
Yes. Oh, it's so good. It's so good. There are so many themes in the Jurassic Park, kind of, at least the first two that he did, that are just so incredibly iconic. It's just masterclass film composing. And, you know, shout out to Michael Giacchino, who did the new Jurassic Park movies, Jurassic World, and the second one. First off, anyone who follows in the shoes of Williams, I mean, I can't imagine that pressure, but Michael Giacchino did a great job with those soundtracks in honoring, you know, Williams's original themes and introducing some. I'm really excited for his Batman score. He's doing the Matt Reeves Batman movie.
Oh, is he?
I think that's going to be, it's going to be really cool. It's going to be really cool.
Interesting. I wonder if he'll sample stuff from Danny Elfman and everything like that, or if he'll just do his own thing.
I kind of hope he does his own thing.
Yeah.
Kind of hope he does his own thing.
Yeah, like the own kind of, Robert Pattinson like Batman film with its own theme will be really, really interesting. Actually, yeah, I didn't know
Yeah,
that, man. That's sweet. I look forward to
yeah.
listening to that.
If you find it on YouTube, actually, one of the trailers had his theme in it, his new one that he wrote for Batman, and
Mm.
it's kind of cool. It sounds like a Western,
Wow.
which is weird. I
Yeah.
maybe that's the wrong term for it, but that's what comes to mind for me. It's really understated, but it's really cool. So I'm
Yeah.
really excited to see how he fleshes that one out.
No, it's awesome, man. I'm gonna definitely check that out. Okay, so your next one, Brian.
Fourth, yes, I am going to go with Danny Elfman's Spider-Man 2.
Oh, great shout. My favorite Spider-Man film, by the way.
Oh, incredible!
Mm.
The best Spider-Man film. No hate against Tom Holland, but Spider-Man 2 is just the best Spider-Man movie that we'll likely ever get, hands
Loved it.
down. And his score for that is just incredible. The main titles, and you just want to start like swinging from buildings or something. It's just, I remember listening to it when I was younger, just trying to stick to a wall, being like, I can be Spider-Man. And his Doc Ock themes. And there's this
Yeah.
great, it's kind of, this is a bit of a sidetrack. What's awesome about, so like music composition isn't just about when to place music, but it's when to not have music. And that's such an important thing that, especially when you're kind of just starting out, it's, you want as much music in there as possible, right? But as you do this enough, you realize that those kind of quiet moments with just the characters or just whatever visuals are on screen are just as important as the music. And all of that is to say that Doc Ock scene when he wakes up in the hospital and just mows down all of those doctors, there's no music. It's just complete like natural, whatever. It's just so well done. It's such a great decision by Raimi and Elfman.
Yeah. It's really interesting you bring that up because I always think of when you think of films and they've got like no music in. Have you seen No Country for Old Men?
Yeah.
That film has very little music. So that whole kind of opening exposition when he's kind of walking through, he's seeing the disaster that's happening. He's kind of like piecing together, right, what's actually happened here. No music. All you can hear is the wind. You can just hear sound effects. It just makes it so much more daunting, eerie. And you're like, oh my God, what has happened here? Sometimes as well, you wait for that music. It's almost like that comfort blanket when you're like, right, I can breathe a bit more now, something. But to not get it, something that you're so used to, it's almost like, it's destabilizing completely. So yeah, I totally get what you're saying there, man.
It's a really great technique, and a lot of movies would serve well to employ more of
that. Yeah, no, I totally get that. Yeah, interesting choice. So my fourth one. Now this one for me is I can't stand the films. I'm not a fan of the franchise, but the music is unbelievable. And it wasn't, I never watched the film, so I didn't hear it in the film. So I don't know where it takes place. But it was my friend at work who actually said, I don't know if you heard this. And I was like, no, like, what is it? And he told me the film that was off. I was like, yeah, definitely not. And he was like, no, listen. So I did, and it blew me away. So it's from Transformers: The Last Night. But the music is from Steve, is it Jablonsky?
Yeah.
And it's called We Have to Go. That track, oh my God, that is the perfect example for me of perfect build in music. So it starts off really kind of quiet. It's just a slow beat throughout, a bit like Time by Hans Zimmer. It's really kind of slow, and then it just builds and builds and builds, and you get some vocal coming in with choir at the end. It's just phenomenal. And that for me is like on my reading playlist.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever heard that. I have heard, I really love the first Transformers soundtrack.
Yeah.
That he also did. First film was really good, and then it's fine, everything's good. But the music, he's a really talented composer. Actually, his soundtrack, this is not on my list, but his soundtrack for The Island.
Oh my God, yes.
Oh my God, those opening titles, and you just get that incredibly low bass drop, and it's just you can just feel it in your chest. It's just he's an incredibly talented composer. I think he's associated with Zimmer too. Hans Zimmer has his own sort of like remote control productions. There's a whole bunch of them that kind of basically have taken the entire market of film composing. So
nice. Like their own little posse of composers. I love that.
Yeah, it is. It is.
But yeah, seriously, man, check it out. It's called We Have to Go, and it's from Transformers: The Last Night. Honestly, and message me and let me know when you've listened to it. It's stone cold classic. I love that.
All right, I'll check it out.
All right, man. So we're up to your last one, right?
Yeah, last one.
All right, do it.
it'll come as a surprise because the movie was generally terrible, but John Powell's score to X-Men: The Last Stand
Okay.
is some of the most incredible writing I have ever heard. John Powell in general, the guy who did How to Train Your Dragons, a whole bunch of things.
Yes. Yeah.
He's just amazing. But
Mm.
The Last Stand is an incredible score. His counterpoint is just amazing in so many cues. The themes that he has, it's just one of my favorites to listen to whenever I'm driving or just kind of hanging out. It's just Phoenix Rises is just an incredible track. It has the like a DSE love motif, and it's so dark and frenetic and chaotic, but it's so beautiful. There are just so many beautiful moments in all of that hecticness that it shines through so unbelievably well.
Nice. I'll have to check it out. I mean, I remember, not really being a big fan of the film. But I mean, the soundtrack, you know what, because I just think of the film and not liking it, I haven't really paid much attention to the soundtrack. I'll definitely go back and check it out now you've said it. Because I loved, as you said, How to Train Your Dragon. That flight music when he first kind of rides Toothless. Oh my God. That nearly made my list. Nearly made it. It was like, if I had like 6 choices, it would be on there straight away.
Yeah.
Brilliant piece of music, right?
It really is. It is. It's such an uplifting piece of music too. I mean, you just want to soar when you're listening to it.
Literally, like jumping off my balcony to it. It's just phenomenal. 100%, totally justified. All right. So my last one, again, this is a classic, and I had to put this on for sentimental reasons, I guess, but this dips right into the horror genre. John Carpenter, Halloween. Like absolute, for me, classic. And here's the reason why. So when I hear this music, I mean, straight away, it's iconic. You think Michael Myers, you think of the Halloween kind of themes, you think of the films, everything straight away. It's phenomenal. And, how it builds as well. And you get them slower notes which creep in later on. My own mother, she can't listen to this music. It freaks her out. She just can't listen to it. So she's a huge Halloween fan. Like her favorite horror film is Halloween, the first one, obviously the John Carpenter film. She loves it. But that music, say if she was here now and I put it on, she would leave. She can't listen to it. It literally freaks her out so much. But I think for me, that proves the power of music, how powerful it can be, especially with scores like that, where she hears a piece of music. That's all it is. But because it's tied to Michael Myers, she's done. She's like, I'm out of here. Can't listen to it. It's phenomenal. It always reminds me of that. But again, it's a stone cold classic piece for horror.
It's a fantastic, fantastic theme. What I love about that too is just its simplicity.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just a handful of notes. It's sometimes the simplest music is just the most memorable and what sticks with us. John Carpenter, he's got so many things that really, I mean, fantastic director. But incredible composer as well. That he was able to kind of do both is just really impressive. Really impressive.
Yeah, definitely. I always think, like, when you were saying there about the simplicity of it, have you seen the film The Holiday? So it's like Cameron Diaz, Kate Winslet, and they swap places. Yeah.
I think Hans Zimmer did the music to that.
Did he? Well, I was going to draw attention to Jack Black's character in that. He's a film composer. And he's there's this scene when he's taking Kate Winslet around the film shop and he's kind of picking up different things and he's like imitating the music from it. But when you just said there, the simplicity, it reminds me of that scene. He picks up Jaws and he's like, you've got 2 notes. And automatically you've got a villain. And straight away, people know that from Jaws. Straight away, as soon as you hear that music, right, here comes the shark. It just shows how powerful, and how crazy we can make these attachments to these scores and how they make us feel, right?
No, absolutely. It never gets old. And that's the best part about that whole thing is that it doesn't get old. Like there's always innovation, which is amazing, especially in Western music. You have a handful of notes that you can kind of move and warp into these amazing combinations and really do out of the box things. And, now that the technology's gotten so good too, I mean, the whole world of sound design is really just exploding. Very exciting.
I always find it crazy how much certain composers can make without the need of an orchestra actually being there. I mean, how electronic, scores can be made now, can, emulate the sound of a choir, or can emulate the sound of a full string quartet without the need of them being there. I mean, don't get me wrong. For me personally, I've been lucky enough to see, I think, 2 orchestras live. We've actually got a place here where I live in Gateshead. It's called The Sage. And it's got one of, I think it's like, it's in the top 10 places in the world with the best like soundscapes inside where orchestras play. It's incredible. And I've seen two orchestras in there. It literally like nearly blew my eyelids off. It was like phenomenal. But like, when I think about film like composers and whatnot, I just think, you see them standing there at the front, like giving it what for and just really getting all of the orchestra together and bringing it. But then, some films are just scored by the likes of maybe even just a keyboard that can make all that sound, right?
Yeah, especially during a pandemic, right? When
Yeah.
when maybe having a 140-piece orchestra is not the best idea. The software, the technology has gotten so advanced and much more affordable. So people like me can kind of give this whole thing a go. But yeah, the software is just amazing. The articulations that it can do, and it's only improving. It's only improving.
Yeah. Give this thing a go. You're killing it, man. Don't be so modest. Just when I threw around a few notes on the keyboard. Okay, so Brian, if you
Yes.
had to choose like a film franchise or you had to work with a particular director, do you have a choice where you'd be like, I would work with them tomorrow?
Gosh, yes, there are so many people that I would love to work with.
Yeah, tell me them.
Well, let's go franchise first because I think that'll sort of elucidate some of the other ones.
Right, cool.
I would love to do a superhero movie. I have in my mind a fantastic superhero score that I'm just waiting for the project.
Nice.
I think that would just be such a fun time, such a fun time. And as far as directors go, I mean, Christopher Nolan, I think is a really, really talented director, even if I don't think all of his movies land quite as effective as maybe he would hope. But I appreciate that he's constantly trying to evolve and take risks, and that I love. I also really Zack Snyder, I love his directorial style. His Watchmen and 300 movie are just like visually beautiful to look at. And I can only imagine the sort of creativity that you can come up with when you have that eye candy for visuals. So I think those would be like my two main ones.
Okay.
I think that would be it. That'd be it.
Interesting that you mentioned Zack Snyder, sorry, because for me, he's very hit and miss. And I'm one of the few people who actually didn't absolutely despise Sucker Punch. I think the soundtrack in that film is incredible.
You exist?
Yeah, I'm one of them.
Wow.
Yeah, right. I didn't absolutely hate it. I'm not here to defend it. I'm not an apologist. But apparently there is a Snyder cut somewhere out there of Sucker Punch I'd like to watch. But yeah, the soundtrack in that though is unbelievable. But again, like for me, Batman versus Superman doesn't land. And I think like Justice League as well, I enjoyed his cut, but overall, am I a huge fan? No, and I'm a big Superman fan. Like I've got pictures of him just out of shot here of like Superman from my wall and whatnot. But yeah, I just think I enjoyed Man of Steel. The soundtrack's incredible, by the way, for Man of Steel. But again, I just think, for me, he's a bit hit and miss. However, as you said, like Watchmen and 300, brilliant masterpieces, incredible films.
Did you see his Army of the Dead?
I haven't watched it yet. Is it good?
It's really solid. It's really well done. It's a lot of fun. It's just fun. It's a fun movie.
Yeah.
So Tom Holkenborg, I think, did that one.
Right. Nice.
Junkie XL. He's a pretty talented dude.
I'll check him out. So I want to ask you basically, as we hinted towards the beginning of the conversation, scientist by day, composer by night. Obviously, there's two different mindsets there. You've got a very academic type side where you're looking at science. It's very fact-based. It's very, kind of reports-based. And, you're so hard at work with this side of your mind, so to speak. And then you've got a really creative side with composing, where you've got that artistic freedom to create whatever you want, really, to work with a director's vision, et cetera, et cetera. How do you find the balance between those two mindsets?
I would say that they're almost the same mindset, which might come as a surprise, but in science there is a lot of background knowledge, and of course you have things that are the facts of science, chemistry, how things work, biology, but you have problems in science that you have to solve or that you're trying to solve, and there's actually quite a bit of creativity in science, especially in the field that I'm in, and so I think that they almost complement one another. You know, the same sort of creativity that I'm using in a science prep of whatever is almost the same as how I would approach film scoring. What are the rules? What area am I playing with? What, you know, what's kind of happening? What can I do? What can't I get away with? So I would say that the two are really intertwined. In fact, it's not uncommon for a lot of like doctors, scientists to also be musicians. The art and science are, I think, largely, it would be like a Venn diagram. There would be a lot of overlap there. There would be a
Right.
lot of overlap there. So I try and approach kind of music writing the same way that I approach science, and then vice versa.
Hmm. You know what? Now you've said that, it actually, yeah, like you've made me see it completely differently. Where it makes sense when you think about it. Like, with science, you said like, right, what are the parameters that we're working within? What have we got to physically do this? Where can we experiment? Where can we try things? Music, you can do that, right? What are the parameters of what the director wants, right? What instruments are we using here? What notes am I going to go for here? And now you've said that, it actually makes a lot of sense where there is a lot of overlap. I suppose, yeah, I totally get that. And now you've put it in that perspective, it makes a lot of sense. I didn't know that there was a lot of scientists who were also like into music as well in terms of performing. That's quite an eye opener.
It's yeah, it's really neat. I know when I first like found that out, I was like, oh, I'm not the only one. Yeah, no, the overlap is really strong, and honestly, it's like you think of something like organic chemistry, and I mean that's a science, but really, I mean that's an art. That's a complete art form. I mean, it's so it allows for so much creativity in changing or designing molecules or whatever it may be.
Mm. Yeah, man, that's cool. That's sick, man. Wow, really like that.
Yeah,
So if you go back to, let's go back from, baby Brian, who first plucked those keys on the keyboard,
yeah.
right up to Brian now, who's composing, music for films that are winning awards, god damn it. Tell me about it. What's been for you, either A or some of the biggest like learning points that you've taken away from this, like the whole experience where you've gone, you know what, wow, that was a big learning curve for me, this moment here, or moments.
Yeah, I think don't be afraid to fail. Sometimes you're going to work on something and it might be incredibly overwhelming. And you're going to make mistakes and things are going to go disastrously wrong.
Mm.
And as long as you learn from those moments, I think that that's really sort of the biggest takeaway. There was a project that I did for the Kennedy Center, and the guy needed 30 minutes of music straight, right? No breaks, just 30
Wow.
minutes of music, which is an insane undertaking. Most cues are 3 minutes, sometimes longer ones might be five, some are even shorter than that. So this sort of like challenge of 30 minutes of music, it was incredibly daunting, especially because we were working remotely. He was in another part of the country, and so I had never met him. I didn't even know it was for a dance. I didn't even know the choreography for much of the project, and so
Wow.
it was really just a lot of back and forth between me and that director, and we somehow made it work. And after that moment, I was like, if I can do 30 minutes of music for a dance that I had largely not seen, I can, I feel like I can do anything at this point.
Yeah, man. I mean, 30 minutes. That is insane.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
crazy. So break that down for me. So when you were recording that, did you do it like bit by bit and, like fix it together? Or were you literally 30 minutes, you hashed it out like yourself?
Yeah, so yeah, first, like all things, started with coming up with a theme
Mm.
and getting myself into sort of this world that we wanted to get in. Um, and and then it was just a lot of me going back and forth, sending him little clips of what I was coming up with, being like, what do you think? Right direction, wrong direction? Are we even
Mm.
in like the same ballpark? And I remember it was a couple, like a week and a half before the performance, and the director had made some changes, and I had basically at that point finished everything. It was just a matter of mixing things and getting things kind of more palatable sounding.
Mm.
And he was like, I hate to do this to you, but we're going to move the first half to the second and so now we need a new first half.
Oh
And
no.
this was like a week and a half or so before there was to perform this piece on stage. And I was like, oh gosh. And that
Yeah.
moment, it was just like a mad fury. I don't even remember finishing it. I know that I did,
Yeah.
um, but it was such a great challenge to go through. And I've since worked with this director. We've really, really had a great working relationship. He's just a fantastic, fantastic artist. Um, but yeah, it was that sort of hurdle, because it was really my first big music moment that had a lot of significance. And it was just an incredible experience to go through. And I learned so many things
Mm.
yeah, doing that. More, I think the biggest thing that I learned was, despite how challenging it was, is like, I'm so on board to continue this music writing journey.
Mm.
So
That's awesome, man. You know what it is? What I really like about that story as well is you were given like a goal, you were given a challenge there. Like to any composer, I think to record 30 minutes of music like solid is going to be tough. But what you didn't do is just went, nah. You went, you know what? Yeah, like let's give it a go. Let's do it. If I fail, if I mess up, well, then I mess up. But you know what? You went for it and you did it and you pulled out the park. And even though, as you said, a week and a half before, he was like, yeah, Brian, we want to change a big chunk of it. You kind of didn't freak out. You just did it. And I think,
yeah,
that is so important in terms of like, the industry that you work in, because there's so many different creative people who could have gotten that job, but it's you that got that job and you worked your ass off for it. You know what? You pulled it out the park, man. So honestly, well done. Kicked ass with that.
thank you, thank you.
No, that's cool, man. So yeah, in terms of like, I mean, that's got to be one of your highlights, but do you have any other kind of moments where you think like, like what I love what you said there is, it kind of made you think, yeah, like if I can do 30 minutes, I can do more, I can do other things. And it really kind of give you that, I guess, the taste of like doing composing really, where you were into it. You were like, yeah, I'm in the zone now. I've got this. Were there any
Yeah.
other moments like that for you in your kind of your whole career where you thought, oh, these for me are the standout moments where I think, yeah, like I nailed it. Obviously that must be one of them, but do you have any others as well that stand alongside that?
I do. It was for little short sci-fi film that I was working on with a friend of mine. He was part of the sound team that just won an Academy Award for Sound of Metal, which
Mm.
is a fantastic movie if you haven't seen it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Fantastic, excellent. Um, and he's a very talented director as well. And this was sort of the first project that I had on my current music workstation. I use Pro Tools, which is lovely and awful all at the same time. But you got to do what you got to do.
Yeah, yeah.
And it was kind of like the first, the learning curve to use some of this software was just massive. I would be calling him at all hours of the night, being like, "How do I make it play and fix this?" And it's zoomed in. I don't know what to do. And so that was a really good one, because I've it's funny, most of the composition and the music writing that I do is on a computer, and I'm just awful at computers. I wasn't born with the ability to understand how computers work. And so kind of doing that project really helped me grow, just not as a musician per se, but just, all right, like, software is not scary anymore. Getting new software and learning kind of new things. And so that was another kind of big moment where I was like, okay, this is all starting to make sense to me. And I get how more successful people do this. And, so that was a good one.
Nice one, man. Yeah, I mean, God, that's a lot to comprehend with there when you talk about, even just getting to use a brand new system like that, which I can't even imagine how complex, like, composing like programs are, like all of this, getting that all together on a system. I've never seen anything like that. So for me to look at it, it just wouldn't make sense of like, what is going on? What is happening here? Whereas, you've got to understand all of that and then compose with it. I mean, that's an extra talent that you've got to master as well straight away. So yeah, totally get that, man. That's crazy. Yeah, but I mean, you did it, man. Hey, there. So just to round off then, Brian, is there any kind of like final thoughts, any like, bits of words of wisdom or advice that you've got left, that you'd like to like, just leave us with? Any advice for like future musicians who want to do composing or anything like that?
Yeah. I think there's sort of there are sort of two main things that I think are kind of important, and it took a little bit for me to learn myself. The first is, don't be afraid to make mistakes. And I think that's just a general rule for life, right? I mean, you're going to have, they're going to happen. They're inevitable. You know, use those as learning opportunities. Don't be afraid to push the boundaries. Don't be afraid to try something new. Might not always pay off. In fact, it may never pay off, right? But try, keep trying.
Yeah.
And I think the other piece would just be to say yes to everything within reason. If someone is approaching you and they need help or something, and I don't know, perhaps they have a small budget or no budget, just do it. Just do it. Well, I mean, why not? You're already writing music and you love writing music. So what's at that point to you?
Yeah.
You know, I think a lot of times people get really bogged down, and I get it. You know, the financial aspect of it, and you know, that can be difficult. But I think saying yes to, you know, a lot of projects, and then developing relationships with, you know, directors or your clients, and really maintaining a good relationship with them, it pays you in dividends later. A lot of the work that I have now is from people that I've worked with before, you know, because it was an enjoyable experience. And you know, when you're creating art, it's easy to kind of have ego take over. Of course, never happens to me, but but you know, it's really important to just maintain those kind of working relationships, and find those moments where you can be humbled by out of the box thinking, or just you know, different types of thinking. So
yeah, you know what, I think it's really important what you said at the end there. It's like a lot of people put a monetary value on stuff straight away. And I think in the reality is when you're creating things and when you create the value is in the experience alone. You know, what you've learned, how you've developed, the things that, you know, you've gone from creating this type of music to now creating this type of music. But if you didn't have that little bit in the middle, you would never be at this point. And that's the experience right there. I think that's so damn important. I think, you know, the thing you said earlier on about, you know, don't be afraid to fail. I think that applies not even just to composing, that applies to so many things in life. There are so many moments, you and I could probably sit here and chat about moments in our own lives where we've gone, I wish I'd give that a go, but I was afraid that it would turn out shit, so I didn't. There's so many moments I think that holds us back, and for whatever different reasons, you know, that may be whether it's what people might think in life, or because, you know, how confident you are in that ability, or like there's different barriers that we have to overcome. But if you've got an opportunity where you can jump at something, where you can give something a go, just do it, man. And if it doesn't work out, oh well, you're back to where you would have been anyway had you not given it a go. It doesn't matter. Don't worry about looking the fool. Don't worry about, you know, it not working out, getting it right first time. I think that's a big thing as well. People think that there's an immediacy to a lot of things that we do, where you've got to get it on the first time. If you don't, well, then it's all over. Reality is it's not. It's a learning curve, it's experience. There's so many things I've failed at, but yeah, you use that experience and you come back and you get better and you absolutely annihilate the next thing that you do. But if you get so caught up in this, I'm not going to try, I'm not going to do it, how do you progress?
right, no, it's so true, it's so true. And that's such a hard obstacle to overcome, because you know, the fear of failure can be so overwhelming sometimes. You know, but you have to recognize that, even as you said it actually brilliantly, even if you do fail, you're still exactly where you were, except now you have more knowledge. Right, and that's never a bad thing. So yeah, that's the biggest bit of advice, is just don't be afraid to keep pushing that envelope, make mistakes, make good relationships. Oh, don't burn bridges. Also, that is a big one. Don't burn bridges. It's so hard to make it in this sort of space, especially if you want to make it into, say, Hollywood or something, as opposed to independent films. And not burning bridges is just such a critically important thing too. Always be polite. Always just be polite. Even if you can't stay on them, just be polite. And it's amazing how far it gets you.
100% agree with that. You know, there's so many connections out there. You never know who that next person might know. And they might just drop your name somewhere and that's it. You've got a connection there straight away. 100%. Absolutely. It's happened for me in my life. It's probably happened for you as well. So no, 100% get that. That's super, super important. So Brian, where can everybody find you? I know you said SoundCloud earlier on, but feel free to pimp all of your socials and SoundCloud again for us, please.
Yeah, so my SoundCloud is under Brian Bryson, and there's a whole bunch of letters on there. But if you just search that, you'll see a picture of my giant face. And then I'm also on Twitter at Bryson20. So you can give me a follow there. And maybe we might set up an Insta in the future, but it would just be for pictures of my dog, Emma.
I mean, that needs to happen immediately.
I know. I can't believe I dropped the ball on that.
So yeah, everyone listening, if you have any questions about composing, if you'd like any advice, if you'd like to work with Brian, you know where to find him. So go and check out his work on SoundCloud and go and, connect with the guy on Twitter because he is awesome, as you've just heard. So thank you everyone for listening. You can find the podcast at Into You Podcast. That's on everywhere. So we've got Twitter, we've got it on Instagram. Just search for it and you'll find us on there. You can also find me. I am at Straughan87. That is Twitter and Instagram as well. Please come and subscribe and give us a comment as well as your thoughts on this episode and everything else in between. We really, really do appreciate it. And give us that 5-star review. Anything underneath is not even worth it, so make sure you don't. But give us a 5-star review as well. No, give us a review. That'll be really, really helpful. So thank you again, everybody. Thank you again, Brian, for taking time out of your schedule to come and do this, man. I really, really do appreciate it. And it's been awesome. It's been incredible chatting to you. So thank you so much for this.
Thank you so much. I had a great time.
No worries, man. Okay, until next time, take care, everyone.